Thousands of years ago, people looked at the same sun we see now, so elite, but they believed it was a god.
And maybe they were not entirely wrong. Because to build this, you had to believe in something greater than yourself.
They turned stone into eternity, Taylor, and knowledge into faith.
Let's uncover how the Egyptians turned science and power in one.
Join us on this new adventure.
"5,000 years ago, along the banks of the Nile, humanity began to dream in stone. The Egyptians built monuments that defied time not only for glory, but to mirror the order of the heavens. To them, the universe was not chaos. It was harmony, a sacred rhythm connecting the stars above to the lives below. In their temples, every wall was a page, every symbol a formula. They studied the body as a vessel of spirit, and the spirit as energy flowing through the body. Medicine, geometry, astronomy. These were not sciences apart from faith, but languages of the divine. From the alignment of the pyramids to the pulse of the human heart, the Egyptians sought to understand how the cosmos spoke and how humankind could answer back. To the ancient Egyptians, the human body was not a mere machine of flesh and bone. It was a sacred reflection of the universe, a living temple where divine order resided. Every pulse of the heart echoed the rhythm of the Nile. Every breath mirrored the endless rising and falling of the Sunday. Within their understanding, the body was both map and mystery, a bridge between heaven and earth. When illness came, it was not a random misfortune. It was a sign, a fracture in the harmony that connected all things. They believed that healing could only begin when the invisible was addressed, when the soul's equilibrium was restored. The physician was not simply a man of herbs and scalpels. He was a priest of the unseen. His task was to interpret the sacred language of the body, to listen not only to the symptoms, but to the silence beneath them. Their greatest healers worked within temples dedicated to Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of both destruction and healing. Her duality taught that disease and cure were not opposites, but parts of the same eternal cycle of renewal. The walls of those temples were covered in knowledge hymns that praised the gods of life and texts that described the anatomy of the heart, the lungs, and the vessels of blood. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents in existence, spoke of over 700 remedies, combining herbs, minerals, and sacred words. But the Egyptians did not treat the heart as a muscle. They saw it as the throne of consciousness. They believed thought itself resided there, and that every feeling carved invisible hieroglyphs upon it. To live in truth, to live in Ma'at, the principle of cosmic balance meant to keep the heart light. In their funerary texts, the heart was weighed against a feather. A life in harmony made the heart as light as truth. A life of chaos made it heavy, bound to repeat the lessons it had ignored. So, their medicine was also a moral art, an attempt to realign the human being with the divine pattern of existence. Healing rituals involved incense, music, color, and vibration. The healers knew that a sound could cleanse as much as a potion, and that the geometry of temples could focus energy just as lenses focus light. Inside the sanctuaries, initiates practiced breathwork, visualization, and fasting. The same techniques rediscovered thousands of years later under different names: meditation, prayer, mindfulness. They understood something we are only now remembering, that the line between body and soul does not exist. One cannot heal the mind while ignoring the flesh, nor cure the body while the spirit is lost. When they embalmed their dead, they did not seek to defy mortality, but to preserve the sacred blueprint of life. To them, the process of mummification was a science of the soul, a symbolic journey through which the essence of a person could rejoin the eternal cycle of rebirth. The organs were removed with precision, placed into canopic jars guarded by protective deities. Each represented not only a physical function, but a cosmic one. Thought, emotion, memory, intuition. Even death was not an ending, but a transformation, a passage through the invisible corridors of existence. Modern science measures, quantifies, dissects. The Egyptians observed, listened, aligned. They saw the physician not as a conqueror of disease, but as a keeper of balance, a mediator between the chaos of nature and the harmony of divine order. Their view of health was profoundly relational. A person was not healed in isolation, but within the web of family, community, and cosmos. To heal one was to restore balance to all. In our age of fragmentation, their wisdom speaks again, that every cell, every breath, every heartbeat is a note in the vast symphony of life, and that dissonance, when faced with reverence, can be turned back into harmony. For them, healing was not about escaping pain, but about understanding it, about learning the secret rhythm hidden inside every wound. And in that rhythm they heard the same truth whispered by the desert wind, the same truth carved in stone, the same truth that still lives in us, that the body, when treated as sacred, remembers how to heal itself. For the Egyptians, the sky was not a void to be studied, it was a sacred text to be read. Each star was a syllable in the divine language, each constellation a phrase in the story of creation. When they gazed upward, they did not see chaos. They saw an ordered universe, an eternal kingdom ruled by rhythm and symmetry. The heavens were alive, breathing with purpose. The stars were not cold fires, but living souls, ancestors and gods sailing across the river of night. They called it the Duat, the realm between life and eternity, a sea of stars through which the sun god Ra traveled each night, only to be reborn with every dawn. The Egyptians built their temples and pyramids as mirrors of that celestial world. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was not a tomb, it was a cosmic instrument, aligned with the belt of Orion and the imperishable stars. Within its geometry lay their understanding of the universe, stability through proportion, immortality through alignment. The shafts pointed to the constellations that never said a message carved into eternity, that the soul, once awakened, never truly dies. These alignments were not symbolic by chance. They were the foundation of a sacred science, the union of mathematics, architecture, and theology. To the priests of Heliopolis, number itself was divine. The triangle, the square, and the circle were not abstract shapes, they were metaphors for the trinity of existence: birth, life, and transcendence. Even sound and proportion followed cosmic laws. They tuned their instruments to the same harmonics found in the distances between planets and stars, what the Greeks would later call the music of the spheres. In this harmony, they heard the voice of the gods. The goddess Nut arched her luminous body over the earth, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it again at dawn. She was not merely myth, she was the embodiment of time itself, cyclical, eternal, ever-renewing. The priests learned patience from her, studying the rhythm of her stars as one might listen to a heartbeat. The appearance of Sirius, the star they called Sopdet, marked the flood of the Nile, the renewal of life, the return of abundance. To them, the sky did not predict fate. It revealed balance. Each celestial motion corresponded to a principle of human behavior. When the heavens shifted, people adjusted their rituals, aligning their actions to the divine order, just as a musician retunes his instrument to stay in harmony with the ensemble. This is why their civilization endured for millennia. They were not racing against time, they were moving with it. They did not fear death, they studied it. They did not worship the sun, they listened to it. The Temple of Dendera preserves one of their most mysterious gifts, the Zodiac of Dendera, a celestial map carved in stone showing planets, constellations, and the eternal dance of light and darkness. To read it is to glimpse a mind that saw no division between the spiritual and the scientific. For them, astronomy was theology, not an act of curiosity, but of reverence. The Egyptians understood what few civilizations ever have. That knowledge without wonder leads to arrogance, and wonder without knowledge leads to blindness. Their science was a form of worship, an offering of precision to the divine order. In observing the stars, they also observed themselves. They saw that as the sun rose and set, so too did empires and generations. They learned that permanence was an illusion, but continuity was real, a continuity of purpose, of soul, of memory. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson they left us, that the heavens above are not far away. They are within us, reflected in the rhythm of our thoughts, the orbits of our choices, the constellations we form when we connect with others. The Egyptians measured the cosmos not to control it, but to understand their place within it. They believed that to live well was to live in harmony with the order of the stars, to act with balance, to think with clarity, to walk in rhythm with truth. In their wisdom, the universe was not a riddle to be solved. It was a song, and we were meant to learn its melody.
It's strange, isn't it? They aligned their temples with the stars not to worship them, but to understand themselves.
They didn't build monuments to control nature. They built them to live in rhythm with it.
It's what we've lost. We seek knowledge as if it were power.
But for them, knowledge was devotion.
They built with meaning in every stone.
Do you think that's why their civilization lasted so long?
Yes, because they didn't separate wisdom from wonder.
Their science was a prayer, and their prayer was precision.
Perhaps that's the balance we're still trying to find.
The story of Egypt did not end with its last pharaoh. Long after the sands covered its temples and the Nile changed its course, the spirit of its wisdom flowed silently into new worlds. The Greeks came first curious, restless, seeking truth in every language. When they entered Egypt, they did not conquer it with swords, but with admiration. They sat at the feet of priests and scribes, listening to ideas that had already traveled thousands of years. Pythagoras learned there that numbers could describe not only shapes, but harmony. Plato absorbed the Egyptian belief that knowledge must serve the soul, not the ego. And Aristotle, though a man of logic, carried within his method the echo of temple discipline. Observation as devotion. The Library of Alexandria, that brilliant flame of human curiosity, was built on Egyptian soil, a bridge between old and new worlds. In its scrolls, the geometry of the pyramids met the poetry of Greece, and through that meeting, the foundation of Western thought was born. Yet the deeper legacy of Egypt was not in formulas or hieroglyphs, it was in its way of seeing. A vision of reality as sacred structure, where the physical and the spiritual were not separate, but two faces of the same eternal order. The Romans inherited the symbols but forgot the silence. They took the obelisks and columns, but not the humility that once guided their builders. In their hunger for empire, They mistook power for permanence. And like all who do, they built monuments that time eventually claimed. Yet even in their fall, Egypt whispered through stone. The Renaissance heard that whisper again. Artists, alchemists, and philosophers searched for the secrets of the ancients. Leonardo da Vinci sketched human anatomy with the same reverence once shown by priests of Sekhmet. Michelangelo carved bodies that seemed alive with divine proportion, as if the gods of the Nile had lent him their geometry. In hidden chambers and candlelit rooms, the Hermetic text said to descend from Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, resurfaced. They spoke of the unity of all things, of a universe governed not by chance, but by correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. Those 7 words carried the essence of Egyptian thought into the heart of modern philosophy. They became the invisible thread that linked alchemy to science, mysticism to reason, faith to physics. The Enlightenment, centuries later, claimed to replace mystery with reason. Yet its thinkers, Newton, Kepler, even Bacon, built upon the very structure that Egypt had conceived, that the universe is intelligible, that patterns can be read, and that truth reveals itself through order. The irony of history is that in trying to move beyond the sacred, humanity has always carried it forward, disguised in new symbols, wearing modern names. In medicine, the Egyptian vision of the body as a system in balance reappeared in holistic healing. In the study of psychosomatics, in our growing awareness that emotion and biology dance together. In architecture, their sense of proportion still guides the human eye. We are drawn to symmetry, not by chance, but by the same cosmic memory that inspired the builders of Luxor and Karnak. Even our obsession with immortality, from digital archives to genetic engineering, is but a new chapter in the same longing that once built tombs meant to outlast time. Egypt's wisdom did not vanish. It changed form, as all eternal things do. Its hieroglyphs became equations, its temples became laboratories, its priests became scientists. And yet, beneath all our modern discoveries, the same question lingers. What does it mean to live in harmony with the universe? The Egyptians might answer, it means remembering who you are. They believed that humanity was not a mistake of nature, but its mirror, that the human spirit was a fragment of divine light, temporarily housed in matter, learning through experience what the stars already know by being. To forget this was the true tragedy. So they carved reminders into stone temples that spoke without words, proportions that whispered eternity. And as we walk among their ruins today, we are reminded of something profound. That civilizations rise and fall, but consciousness evolves. Each era inherits the wisdom of the last, reshaped, reimagined, reborn. Egypt's gift was not knowledge to be stored, but awareness to be lived. Its true monuments are not in the desert, they are within us. The capacity to seek meaning, to build with purpose, to turn even silence into language. For perhaps that is what immortality really is, not the preservation of the body, but the continuation of truth through those who dare to remember. We live in an age the ancients could not have imagined. We've touched the stars they once worshipped, split the atoms that built their world, and encoded our memories in light instead of stone. Yet, somehow, the questions they asked still echo louder than the answers we found. What is balance? What is truth? What does it mean to live in harmony with what we create? The Egyptians taught that power without wisdom leads to ruin. Today, we hold more power in our pockets than an entire empire once did in its armies. But can we say the same of our wisdom? Our technology connects us, yet isolates us. It amplifies our voices, but also our noise. It promises knowledge, but rarely delivers understanding. The ancients built temples to remind themselves of their place in the cosmos. we build screens that reflect only ourselves. And still, the same truth endures. That civilization depends not on what we can do, but on what we choose to do. The Egyptians aligned stone to the stars. We align algorithms to our desires. But alignment, in any age, is an act of intention. The challenge has never changed: to bring order to chaos without destroying wonder. For them, the sacred and the scientific were one. To measure the world was to praise it. They saw the divine not as something to escape, but as something to participate in. Perhaps this is the wisdom we've forgotten, that spirituality and reason are not rivals, but reflections. Our world speaks in data, numbers, and codes. Theirs spoke in rhythm, symbols, and myth. Both sought the same thing, a language capable of describing the invisible. For what are our equations, if not hieroglyphs written in numbers? What are our satellites, if not modern pyramids built to reach the heavens? Yet there is a difference, a silence that has gone missing. The Egyptians left space for mystery. They knew that not everything seen can be understood, and not everything understood can be controlled. Their priests taught that true sight begins when one learns to look inward. In a world that measures everything, they measured meaning. Their word for harmony, ma'ah, meant more than balance. It meant truth, justice, and cosmic order intertwined. To act against it was to create disorder, not only in the world, but within oneself. What if Ma was not a goddess of myth, but a principle the universe still obeys? What if our climate, our societies, even our minds, are all reacting to the imbalance we've created when we forget that every action has a spiritual weight? Perhaps this is why their wisdom endures. Because it is not ancient, it is timeless. It reminds us that progress is not a straight line, but a spiral, returning, rethinking, rediscovering. It reminds us that our empires of glass and steel will one day become dust, just as theirs did. But the spirit behind them, the longing to build, to understand, to connect, that survives every fall. We call it innovation. They called it creation. The difference is not in the act, but in the intention. Theirs was an offering. Ours, too often, is an escape. Yet if we listen carefully, the same river flows beneath both. The desire to make meaning out of existence. The Egyptians built to endure eternity. We build to outrun time. And in doing so, we forget that eternity is not somewhere ahead, it is already here, unfolding in every moment of awareness. That is their true legacy to us. The understanding that consciousness is the bridge between matter and mystery. We do not need to return to the desert to find it. We only need to remember. Remember that knowledge is sacred when used with purpose. Remember that progress without reflection becomes destruction. Remember that we are not separate from the order of the cosmos. We are part of its equation. And so, as we stand at the edge of a new age of artificial minds, digital immortality, and worlds built from light, perhaps Egypt's voice still calls to us. Know thyself, not the self that owns or achieves, but the one that observes, the self that connects the finite to the infinite. The self that remembers we are made of the same dust that once shaped pyramids and stars alike. That is the wisdom worth carrying forward, not as nostalgia for the past, but as guidance for what comes next.
It's strange, isn't it? The more we discover the past, the more it seems like a mirror.
Perhaps that's what history really is. Not a record, but a reflection. And reflections change, depending on the light we bring.
The Greeks sought wisdom in reason. The Egyptians in rhythm.
But both sought harmony between heaven and earth, thought and spirit.
And perhaps that's what we still seek.
There you go.
To live wisely in a world that has forgotten what wisdom looks like.
Then perhaps our journey is just beginning.
Yes, and in the next episode, we'll be taking a closer look at the Mayan civilization.
And, speaking of which, why was the Mayan calendar more accurate than ours?
Oh, curious about this too. See you next Sunday in the next Echo of the Empire.